From the earliest days, I understood my place as the second choice. I am Emma, and the memories I have are filled with watching my parents pour endless attention and opportunities onto my older brother, Michael, while I lingered in the background. They never hid the difference in treatment. It was blatantly obvious to me. As a child, I remember being alone at the kitchen table with my schoolwork, while my parents whisked Michael away to another one of his singing competitions or club activities. Michael, being 3 years my senior, seemed to be more worthy in their eyes. Whenever a teacher mentioned his potential, my parents were quick to support it, even if it meant spending money beyond our means on lessons and equipment. Michael has such a lovely voice, Mom would exclaim to anyone willing to listen, confident in his destined greatness. Meanwhile, I learned early on to keep my needs and passions in check. When I showed interest in art, Mom's apologetic smile told me everything. "Maybe next semester, dear," she'd say. "Michael's lessons are using up our budget right now." The favoritism became glaringly apparent during Michael's final year of high school. At dinner when I was 15, my parents excitedly announced they'd been saving to send Michael to Preston College, a prestigious state school. "Really?" Michael's eyes sparkled. "That's fantastic." Mom added that they'd let him stay in our nearby apartment free of rent, so he could focus on his studies. I pushed my dinner around my plate in silent disappointment, for no one waited for my reaction. They were all enraptured by Michael's gleeful ambitions. That night, I calculated in my mind. With so much spent on Michael, my hopes for a college fund seemed slim. But instead of despairing, I decided to act. The following day, I approached my grandfather at his antique store, explaining my plight. "Emma, I could simply give you the money," he said, pondering aloud. "But it'd be better if you earned it. How'd you like to work here after school?" That's how my new journey began. As Michael packed for his collegiate adventure, I worked afternoons at the antique store. I cataloged, assisted customers, and learned the business from my grandfather. Granny brought me snacks, weaving tales of the store's vintage treasures. When I shared my work plans with my parents, their relief was telling, almost like a problem had been resolved for them. In 3 years at the store, my savings grew enough for college. My high school graduation went by quietly with just a modest dinner, but I didn't mind. I took pride in my independence. Enrolling at the local state college, I pursued a feasible business degree that wouldn't deplete my funds. Living at home and using public transport wasn't glamorous, but was practical. One evening I mentioned to my parents the idea of getting a used car to ease campus commutes. "Sorry, Emma," Dad replied, barely lifting his gaze from his phone. "It's just not in the budget." Mom interjected, "The bus system works fine. Plenty of students use it." I bit back my retort, recalling their assistance with Michael's license and car, but that was ancient history now. My college life flew by, and just as I finished spring finals, the house buzzed with excitement over Michael's graduation from Preston. My parents organized an extravagant celebration, inviting many relatives, friends, and neighbors. Busy in the kitchen with appetizers, I saw Michael make his grand entrance with Sarah, his blonde college girlfriend, hand in hand. The gathering focused on them instantly. "Everyone," Michael declared, holding attention, "Sarah and I have exciting news." The room erupted as they revealed their engagement. Mom was overwhelmed with emotion and tears of joy when she congratulated Michael, while Dad gave him such a hearty pat on the back that I feared he might topple over. Sarah added, with a voice as sweet as honey, "There's more. After the wedding, we are relocating to Connecticut, where my parents own a thriving business, and they want us to manage it." The news made Mom sob harder. "My baby boy, a successful businessman." "That's my son," Dad announced with pride. "I always knew you were meant for great things." As the scene unfolded, I stood in the corner, unnoticed, despite my 4.0 GPA in my freshman year and juggling part-time work at the local cafe with my academics. It was something I had grown used to. The ensuing year saw Mom and Dad engrossed in planning the ideal wedding for their beloved son, while I continued my studies into my 3rd year. They secured a hefty loan to finance the extravagant event, covering everything from venue to flowers, leaving no detail overlooked. The wedding was as lavish and emotional as one would expect, centered entirely around Michael. I watched from the sidelines in my bridesmaid dress, which I had paid for, as my parents beamed with pride while dancing with the newlyweds. Despite the expenses, I knew they'd be repaying the loan for years to come. Once Michael and Sarah moved to Connecticut, an idea sparked in me while staring at my textbooks in the cramped room at my parents' house. The empty apartment Michael used in college, conveniently close to campus, seemed perfect for some much-needed independence. One evening, I approached my parents during their TV time. "Mom, Dad," I started, "since Michael's place is vacant, can I move there?" They exchanged looks before Mom replied, "Sure, but you'll need to pay rent." The concept hit me hard, as Michael lived rent-free. Dad shifted awkwardly, saying, "Things are different now, with the wedding loan to pay off. We need the extra income." Shocked, I confronted them. "But I'm your daughter too. I've never asked for anything. I covered my own tuition and used the bus always." Mom halted me with a gesture, after having an unspoken exchange with Dad, then finally agreed. "All right, we'll charge you half." Reluctantly, I accepted, knowing it was my best option. That weekend, I moved into the apartment, finding traces of Michael everywhere. I increased my shifts at the cafe to afford the rent, squeezing in study sessions amid work hours. The chaos consumed my final year. Graduation day dawned before I realized it. But unlike the opulent celebrations at Michael's graduation, my parents planned only a quiet dinner at home with my grandparents. During our modest meal of my homemade lasagna, Grandma praised me. "Emma dear, we're so proud of you. Graduating with highest honors while working part-time is a feat." Just then, Mom's phone buzzed and she exclaimed, "Speaking of accomplishments," Michael texted, "the business is thriving and expanding to new locations." My graduation dinner shifted towards celebrating Michael's success once more, noted by subtle looks exchanged between my grandparents and Grandpa's supportive squeeze on my shoulder. However, my effort in college wasn't in vain. Just 2 weeks post-graduation, I landed a position at Anderson and Mitchell, a prestigious city firm. The starting salary exceeded expectations, thrilling me at the career onset. This joy lasted only 3 days until my parents learned about it. During an unexpected visit to my apartment, Mom declared, "Emma, with your new salary, it's time you start paying full rent." Baffled, I reminded her of our previous agreement, but we had settled on half. Emma's mother spoke with a factual tone, reminding her that now she could afford the apartment. "That was when you were a student," she had said. Emma wanted to mention that even Michael lived here rent-free after he had a job, but she knew comparing herself to her brother was futile. Given the apartment's proximity, just 10 minutes from her office, Emma reluctantly agreed. As time passed, Emma focused on her job, determined to prove her value at the company. Her mother would call every month like clockwork with a reminder. "Emma dear, just letting you know the rent is due on Friday. We depend on that money." For 3 years, this routine continued, during which Emma received a significant promotion and raise. She kept this to herself, realizing any sign of financial success only led to more demands from her parents. Occasionally, she'd get updates that Michael and Sarah had a baby boy. She saw pictures on social media, but hadn't visited. Their communication had dwindled to obligatory birthday wishes and holiday greetings, which she didn't mind. Then there was the phone call that changed everything. Her mother's voice was tense. "Emma, we need to talk about your brother. There's trouble. The business, it's bankrupt. He had a serious argument with Sarah's parents, and they're furious with how he handled things. They're not on speaking terms anymore." Emma, knowing where this was going, listened as her mother continued. "He's coming back with Sarah and the baby." Carefully, Emma said, "Oh, I assume they'll stay with you and Dad?" Her mother paused. "Actually, the apartment you're in is quite spacious. They'll stay there." Shocked, Emma nearly dropped the phone. "What? Mom, this is my home. I've lived here for years." Her mother insisted. "Don't be dramatic, Emma. Your brother needs help. He has no money, so he'll stay for free. You can keep paying the rent." Exasperated, Emma protested. That's absurd. If he's moving in, maybe I should look for my own place. Her mother's voice turned stern. Don't you dare. We need your rent more than ever. Michael's having a tough time. Don't make it harder for him. In disbelief, Emma hung up. The day they moved in was worse than expected. Michael, Sarah, and baby Tommy arrived with an overwhelming amount of luggage and baby gear. Emma's mother came to oversee the transition, which felt more like making Emma's life inconvenient. Her mother instructed, Emma, clear out your room. Michael and Sarah need it for Tommy's nursery. Emma stood at her bedroom doorway, her personal space for years, asking, where am I supposed to sleep? The living room has a perfectly good couch, her mother replied while already moving Emma's belongings. Emma protested, You can't be serious. I pay full rent here, and you're putting me on the couch. Her mother's expression hardened. Don't be selfish, Emma. Babies need proper rooms. Emma watched as her bedroom turned into a nursery, complete with all the baby necessities. Her possessions were hastily piled in the corner of the living room, now her bedroom. In the following weeks, life was a nightmare. Michael loitered around the apartment, either lamenting about his in-laws or reminiscing about his business glory days. Sarah either cried or argued with Michael about diaper duties. The baby sensed the tension, crying persistently. Emma returned from exhausting workdays to a messy apartment with dishes piled high, toys everywhere, and overflowing laundry hampers. She tried ignoring it, but the mess attracted ants, and the clutter was unbearable. So Emma ended up cleaning, cooking, and doing laundry. Meals she cooked vanished before she could eat them. One evening, after a particularly tough day, she decided to extend an olive branch. Michael, she called, keeping her tone neutral. My company has openings. I could recommend you to HR. The benefits are great, and the starting salary is decent. Michael glanced up from his phone, his face showing indignation. An entry-level position? You're kidding, right? I'm a businessman, not for entry-level positions. I need something commensurate with my experience, he scoffed. Unable to hold back, Emma retorted, Experience in ruining a business? Before she could stop herself, the words had escaped. Michael's face turned defensive. You have no idea what happened. It was my in-laws' fault. They set me up. 3 months into our mandatory cohabitation, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, which was now littered with Tommy's dried baby food and Sarah's coffee rings. Examining my bank statements, the expenses had almost doubled since Michael and his family moved in, proving unsustainable. This realization urged me to call my parents. I practiced what I intended to say, determined to stay composed. Mom, Dad, we need to discuss the living arrangement, I started. Michael and Sarah aren't contributing to the household expenses. They consume all the food and utilize utilities I pay for. Emma, my mom interrupted sharply. I can't believe how selfish you're being. Your brother lost everything. His in-laws turned against him. And he has a baby to look after. Dad chimed in from the background. You should be grateful you're able to help family. I countered. But I'm not just helping. I'm carrying the entire financial burden alone. They don't even buy groceries. Your brother is facing a tough time, and this isn't permanent. You need to show more compassion, my mom snapped back. That night, I began looking for apartments online, bookmarking several options within walking distance of my office, just in case the situation worsened. And it did. Exactly 2 weeks later. I was attempting to work on documents from the couch bed in my living room, as Tommy's cries echoed and Michael and Sarah engaged in their 4th argument of the day. When the doorbell rang, my parents entered unannounced. My mom had that familiar determined look, the one she often wore when announcing some new project Michael was embarking on. Dad stood behind, avoiding eye contact. Emma, we need to discuss the rent, Mom declared. I pay it on time every month, I replied. Yes, but starting next month, we're doubling it, she responded. Silence enveloped the room, and even Tommy stopped wailing. Was this a joke? Double? But I already pay the full market rate. Mom gestured around the cramped apartment. There are more people living here now. More wear and tear, more utilities. I stifled a laugh. How is it fair that I pay double to sleep on my own couch while being forced to host? Michael didn't hold back. This is ridiculous. I lost everything, and now rent. Of course not, sweetie. Mom soothed him before returning her stern gaze to me. Emma, with your good job, you can support this. Michael needs time to recover. I surveyed their faces. Mom's stern resolve, Dad's evasive silence, Michael's indignation, Sarah's satisfaction. I swallowed the frustration built over 3 months and said quietly, fine. Double rent starts next month. Mom beamed with satisfaction and they left soon after, clearly pleased with their announcement. Little did they know they had just given me the final catalyst to make my decision. Later, trying to read on my uncomfortable couch bed, I overheard Michael and Sarah in the kitchen excitedly chatting. Can you believe it? Sarah giggled. Your mom said they're giving us half of Emma's rent. Michael's smug reply ignited anger. Of course, they understand we need help, and Emma can support us. This is perfect, Sarah continued. We live here for free, and even have spending money. Your sister doesn't need to know. At that moment, realization hit. My parents were not just being unfair but fully complicit in this scheme, using me to fund Michael's indolence. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the bookmarked apartment listings. One caught my attention, a modern one-bedroom apartment in a quiet building closer to my work. It matched the rent I'd been paying before their proposed increase. I dialed the number immediately. Keeping my voice low, I said, Hello, I'm interested in the Cedar Street apartment. Can I come see it now if that's okay? Absolutely, came the response. I'll be there in 15 minutes, I confirmed. When I arrived, the apartment exceeded my expectations. It was spotless, peaceful, and Michael-free. Excitedly, I signed the lease immediately and used my emergency savings to pay the security deposit. That night, I waited for everyone in the existing apartment to fall asleep before discreetly packing my essentials into 2 large suitcases. I left my furniture behind because I could purchase new ones later, free from unwanted memories. Next morning, I silently wheeled my bags to the door as Michael sat at the table scrolling through job listings he had no plans to apply for. Going somewhere? He muttered, eyes barely lifting. A month-long business trip, I lied smoothly, adding, big project in our Cincinnati office. He grunted, already uninterested. By that evening, I moved into my new apartment, ordered some takeout, and sat alone in my unfurnished living room. The quiet was like music, no crying infants, no squabbling couples, no guilt-inducing parents, simply peace. For the following month, I lived quietly. I bought a comfy bed, a cozy couch, and kitchenware meant just for me. I prepared meals that would patiently wait in the fridge till I was ready to eat. Best of all, I slept right through the night, undisturbed by Tommy's crying. Then, right on cue, my phone rang with Mom's number. Emma, she demanded without introduction, why haven't you sent the full rent we agreed upon? Double, remember? I laughed softly. Actually, Mom, I'm aware of your agreement with Michael and Sarah. Were you planning to tell me that half of my rent money was going into their pockets? That's none of your business, she snapped. Your brother needs... But I broke off, still chuckling. What Michael needs is to grow up and finally take responsibility. I've moved out and got my own place. The apartment is now yours and Michael's. Enjoy. You can't do this, she screeched. We need that rent money. Well, I countered, amused. I'm sure Michael will finally start contributing now that he has a chance to get back on his feet. Good luck with that. There was silence on the line as my words sank in. Mom was probably calculating the seriousness of the situation, now lacking their dependable income. Emma, honey, she attempted sweetly, a tone she used when she wanted something from childhood. Let's not rush. We can work something out. Maybe the original rent amount was fine. I settled on my new sofa, one I picked myself, grounded in the thought that here, no one had the authority to send me away.
No, Mom.
That won't happen. But Emma, we're family, she pleaded. Is that what family does? I retorted, plotting behind my back to send my money to Michael, kicking me out of my own room despite me paying the bills. You've treated me like an ATM my entire life, while pampering Michael like a prince. That's not family.
Goodbye, Mom.
I ended the call and blocked their numbers. That was half a year ago. My grandparents send me updates, even though I don't ask. They seem to know I need validation that I made the right decision. From what they share, Michael, Sarah, and Tommy remain in the apartment. They haven't paid rent. Mom and Dad handle the bills, and even offer them spending money because the baby needs things. My brother still hasn't found employment. Apparently, there aren't enough executive roles fit for bankrupt businessmen. Meanwhile, my life feels serene. I recently got promoted, bought a car, and enrolled in evening courses for my MBA. My apartment remains tidy, my meals stay in the fridge until I choose to enjoy them, and I sleep soundly in my own bed. At the supermarket the other day, Sarah's cousin mentioned they're expecting another child. I smiled and wished them well, aware my parents are likely strategizing how to fund another nursery. But that's no longer my concern. For the first time, I'm prioritizing myself, and it feels absolutely right.